Hi there, friend. You're listening to Season 2, Episode 13 of the Cowgirl Confessions podcast. On this episode, I catch up with well-known trick rider Windy Lattin of Wynnewood, Oklahoma. Whether Windy is Roman riding, working behind the scenes as a secretary or a timer at a bull riding, or watching her son compete, she tackles every task at hand with class, professionalism, and the cowgirl state of mind. I encourage you to embrace that same cowgirl state of mind as you work toward your goals and dreams as you ride through 2021. Hey y'all, and welcome. You're listening to the Cowgirl Confessions podcast. I'm your host, Dakota Dawn Johnson, small-town cowgirl with southern roots, blazing a trail as a Midwest ranch wife, mama, and businesswoman. The mission of Cowgirl Confessions is to share the wonderfully wild and western life stories of cowgirls from all walks of life. We'll talk about the highs, the lows, and everything in between when it comes to navigating careers, cowboys, kids, and cattle. Legendary cowgirl Dale Evans said it best: "Cowgirl is a pioneer spirit, a special brand of American courage. The cowgirl faces life head-on, lives by her own lights, and makes no excuses." Cowgirls take stands. They speak up. They defend the things they hold dear. A cowgirl might be a rancher, a barrel racer, a bull rider, or an actress, but she's just as likely to be a checker at the local Winn-Dixie, a full-time mother, a banker, an attorney, or an astronaut. If you're into wet saddle blankets, talks with God, buckets full of laughter, and the life lessons learned in the process, kick off your boots and settle in. I pray these stories encourage, empower, and give you just the leg up you need. Here's to embracing the cowgirl state of mind, no matter how wild and western life may get along the way. Windy, I really appreciate you agreeing to be on the podcast and share some of your story today with the listeners. Just thank you so much for joining us.
Well, I appreciate you even considering calling me. I'm an honor.
Well, heck yeah. I made a list back when this whole podcast was just kind of a dream. I hadn't taken any action on it yet. Didn't even know the first thing about podcasting. And you were on that top 10 list of people. I was like, you're one of those best kept secrets, because you're not always, putting all your stuff out there on social media like a lot of people do. And so you're kind of a best kept secret, I think, in the Western world. And I'm really thankful I've gotten to know you on a more personal level, just through living in Oklahoma for a while. And so let's just start off by you telling us a little bit more about yourself and your family.
Well, I'm Windy Lattin. Come from the Ratchford Rodeo family. My dad is Wendell, and he rodeoed in the IPRA from the time he was 17. And my grandpa was Thurman, and his wife was Teresa. And they had started a rodeo company back in the late 50s, early 60s. And my dad grew up going to rodeos from the time he was 8. And then his brothers, my uncles Jimmy and Davy, both competed. My aunt competed. My dad met my mom on the rodeo circuit, and they had me on the road while they were still going. And until I was school age, we traveled, lived out of a camper and rodeoed the world. And then majority of my family on dad's side all still compete or have had competed in some event, mostly rough stock, but we do have some ropers on the cousin side. And it's just no way around getting out of a rodeo. I mean, it was just going to happen. I don't really have anybody in my family that doesn't have some sort of connection now. Met my husband through rodeos. He got hired to fight bulls at the Longhorn rodeos that we were working on, and we've been together ever since. And so it's just been, I guess, our whole circle of life has been around rodeo.
Oh man, I love that, and I love, it's such a family oriented sport. And your dad, for those of you guys listening, Windy and I, we've got a pretty unique story. I mean, we knew each other through rodeo and going to some IPRA rodeos, but
when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life, kind of mid-20s, I up and moved back to Oklahoma for a second time. And Wendy's dad, ended up being my landlord, and kind of a really and truly, not kind of, but a second, like a second dad to me. And because Wendy took a job, a friend of ours, a mutual friend that's an attorney, she had went on maternity leave. And so Wendy had went on to take another job. And so the job Wendy had was open and I was needing a job. And so I kind of took that. And then we had the connection that her dad was my landlord. And so, Wendy, while she's my friend and I met her through rodeo, I got to really feel like I was part of that Ratchford Lattin family, if you will, for many years when I lived in
Yes.
Wynnewood. And so yeah, you make everybody feel like family.
Well, we try. I know Dad does. He loves being able to help people, and he's always got his door open and loves having visitors and people coming to his family. I know that.
Yeah, I mean, it was always, you need somewhere to stay or you needed something, you weren't going to do without there for sure. And so, well, Wendy, I'm wondering, you wear a lot of hats. I mean, I haven't ever seen anything that you couldn't do. If I was going to put on any type of production, whether it was a rodeo or not, I'd be like, if you need a multitasker, Windy Lattin's the person to hire, because you can do it. You can time, you can secretary, you can trick ride, like you can talk to people. You know how to just wear a lot of hats and do it really well. So, but I feel like a lot of people in the rodeo industry know you as a trick rider. You're extremely talented. And so how did you get your start trick riding?
As long as I can remember, my granny told me that when I was 2 years old, that's all I ever wanted to do was be a trick rider. I had no intentions of doing anything else. And we were on the Longhorn run, Longhorn World Championship Rodeo that Loretta Lynn started, and then Bruce Lerke ran for years. Dad has always worked for them from the time he was 18 years old. He's either worked for them or he ended up being the stock contractor for that rodeo company for years. About 22 years, I believe, was his run. And so every year Bruce made it a point to have trick riding. And it was some of the best trick riders that was ever around. And so I grew up watching those trick riders and becoming their kids' friends. And they were like second parents, as most rodeo people are. You're around them every week. You end up being one of their kids too. And so as long as I could remember, when I got up into school, of course we ran barrels, had to go to the high school rodeos, had barrel horse, pole horse, goat tying horse, all that. And I'd be out there messing around on all of my horses trying to figure out how to do those tricks. And so I got into my high school years and still wanted to trick ride. At 13, I went to some friend's house that had a saddle. Patty Visa. She had a saddle. She had a horse. She came from Sammy Andrews. He was a pickup horse, thought would be good enough to trick ride on. She didn't trick ride much herself, but she thought she knew enough to show me. And I spent the weekend with her. And I look back and this wonder we didn't kill me. But we would send that Gildan, and we weren't sure about how we had these straps hooked up, but we would send him down the side of this pasture at just like a full run. And she'd sit at the other end of the pasture on a mare that he was really sour to. And after one day of doing everything at a standstill, I just did it at a run and didn't know any better. And so that was my one weekend of getting to see if I wanted to do it or not. And then it took like 3 more years before I got my own saddle and could do my own thing. And then of course I went to college and I didn't have a place to keep a horse. And then it got to one of those, crossroads where I try to go visit Dad at the Longhorn rodeos every chance I get. Even when I was in high school, every weekend I could get away, I'd run see him, and I'd get to carry the flags, the pivots for the openings, and I'd get to help, do whatever I could. And then Melanie Isley, Keith Isley's wife, she told me she was going to retire, and I was like, well, I've been training on one of our pickup horses, trying to get him to trick ride. I was like, my saddle is not in good shape, but if you'll help me, tell me how to set this up, I mean, I would love to learn. And so, I stayed that fall and worked on that pickup horse and got him patterned, got him to where I could do some stuff on him. She showed me how to get my straps right. And that fall, she said, "Hey, I'm going to retire. You know, if you could get 3 good tricks down, I bet Bruce would hire you since you're already, you know, going on with your dad." And so I had to make a decision whether I was going to either quit school, because, you know, at that time in the early 90s, there was no internet. There was no homeschool or online schooling at all. So I had to decide, you know, if I'm going to either do this and take my one shot where this door is open and I'll never get this opportunity again, and try to go for it. And so I tried my best to get those, you know, 3 good tricks down on that pickup horse. And then I asked Bruce if I could audition for him at Nashville. And the weekend I got there, I started working on that horse with Melanie, and I believe it was Angelo Idisi. He's from New York, was there, and they were helping me with him, you know, make sure everything was going to go good. And that horse had when I had been practicing on him, he had not been used as a pickup horse, so he wasn't sore and he was feeling fine. Well, I was using him, practicing on him at that rodeo after they'd done picked up broncs on him all weekend, not realizing that now he's sore. And Dad actually stayed and watched me practice that day. And I think that was maybe the first time he'd ever watched me practice, because he never really wanted me to do it. And I get up in my trick and this sucker breaks in 2, and I mean, he does buck and throws me down, steps on me. I get up and I catch him again. I was like, I don't know why he did that. He's never done that before. And I do another trick and I do a liberty stand. And about the time I come around the curve, he breaks in 2 again. And I mean, throws me back down underneath him. I've got 1 foot still in the strap. He kicks me, steps on me. Finally, I come loose, and Melanie is like bawling. And she's like, "Please don't ever get on that horse again." She said, "Go saddle Sonny." That was her horse. And so I got on him, and the rest was history. Like, everything just went so smooth. That horse was so perfect and automatic, and everything was like, oh my God, this is a dream. And the next day I got to practice on him then. And then the next day I auditioned for Bruce and he hired me. And so that next January, I started out on the Longhorn run as a trick rider in 1991. And I leased Sonny because Keith was still working for Bruce that year. So I leased Sonny on a lease purchase agreement through that run, which was at that time like 11 weeks in the spring. It was a long run. And got Sonny bought. And then that summer, Jay Anders called. She said, I heard you're trick riding and I need a partner. And I was like, yeah. I was like, I'd love to. And she's like, well, you're gonna have to get your PRCA card. And so I had to go down to South Texas to Houston to meet her, and worked with her the first time that spring after I got back from the Longhorn run, and worked for James Harper at a show. And it wasn't a PRCA rodeo, but he's like, if she does good this weekend, talking about me, I'll sign for her card. And so I went down there and it went all great. And he signed for my card. Jay signed for my card. Liesl Harris signed for my card. Charlie Battles signed for my card. And somebody else, and I don't remember right now. Might have been Keith. I can't remember right now who it was, but they all signed for my card, and I got my PRCA card that summer. And Jay and I traveled for 2 or 3 years. She ended up coming to work on the Longhorn run with me too. And then a few years later, Stacy and I got married, and or got together, and then later got married. And so Jay kind of went one way and I went the other, and picked up some more partners on the way. I was trick rode with Penny Walton, Melissa Navarre, lots of different partners along the way that we just hire rodeos at. But I mean, I got to where I could trick ride on Sonny, and then I bought another horse and trained Bucky. And I could do most of the act by myself. I had like a Wild West show act, and then I Roman rode. I had started Roman riding. And so it just seemed more family oriented to be able to stay closer to home, book smaller rodeos, make more money, and still be able to, have a life at home. So that's kind of what I did for most of the years. Still kept my PRCA card, got back on the road and went to quite a few PRCA rodeos when Penny and I started trick riding together. And then got to work the NFR in 04, mostly due to Penny and John Harrison helping me with that. And then after Trevor, my son, was born, and then he got up to where he was wanting to trick ride, we went pretty good for about 3-4 years. And then when he started riding bareback horses, he wanted to quit me. And then it's like really hard for me to go and work and book rodeos, and not have a partner and still get back to work on Monday. So that's kind of where I'm at now. It seemed like every time it was time for me to quit, I've always felt like it was God put a horse or put something in my path that said, here, you still need to go. And that's kind of the way it's been. There's always been something that a horse has fell into my lap that's just opened the doors back up to where I start over again. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's such an inspiring story to hear you talk about, basically, since the early 90s, how that's kind of unfolded and all the opportunities that you've had, because it was literally, like you said, I mean, it was as a lot of people say now, like progress over perfection. Like like you said, you didn't really know exactly what you're doing that first weekend when you're running the horse to another horse they're just soured to down the fence, but then you just kept at it, and the right people, I think more than anything, when you were talking about that horse breaking in two with you twice and you just getting hammered but getting back up, I mean, she saw that like you were gritty enough and tough enough. When people can see that, and like you having that cowgirl state of mind, they want to help you. They know that you're going to work hard. And so I just think it's really, really inspiring to hear how that continued to just more doors open for you. Like you said, the right horses and the right people came along. And whenever I was living in Wynnewood, that's around the time when you and Trevor were trick riding together. And I'd never been around, mother and son duo, trick riding together. And so that it was just always really, really neat getting to watch y'all do that together.
Yeah, he had not really had any interest in riding or riding bulls or any of that. Like he tried to ride bulls, and when he was like a little bitty guy, I want to say 6 or 7 years old, they were going to put him on a buck and bull calf, and it wasn't like starting out on a sheep. They put him on a heifer, and she did slam him, and then that was it. I'm done. He wasn't going no more, and he didn't have any desire to do that for a while. And then he wanted to fight bulls, and Cody Webster was up here playing around in our practice pen, and so they were gonna fight bulls, and he got run over then, and that was it. He wasn't gonna fight bulls anymore, and he thought he'd wanted to be like his dad and be a bullfighter, and then that didn't work. So he always liked to go with me to the rodeos, though. He always liked to go and hang out behind the chutes and hang out with the stock contractors and hang out with all the crew. So he wanted to be part of something. And at that time, we just hadn't found his niche, and he was still little. And so he went to the state fair with me one year, and I worked the state fair of Oklahoma City with John Harrison since 2009. And Leon Adams was there, and his grandson, Zane Good. And Zane and Trevor got to be big buddies, and Zane's about 4 years older than Trevor. And Leon, he just pretty much told Trevor, he's like, get up on that team and see if you like it. And it was Rudy and Trudy, the team, Zane's team. And so Zane kind of rode him around with them and stuff, and he just thought that was the coolest. And then Melissa Navarre's daughters was starting to trick ride, the oldest one at that time, Shyla, and she was just a few years younger than Trevor. And he was like, well, she can trick ride, why can't I? And I said, well, you've never even had any interest in riding a horse, so I would love to teach you how to trick ride. And so between Leon and Zane and Shyla, that week of state fair, he pretty much had decided that he wanted to try trick riding. And so I was like, okay, it's no problem. I can get you a pony. I'll train a pony if that's what you want to do. I was like, but here's the deal. if you trick ride and you get paid to trick ride, that means we're going to be dedicated to practice. That means you're going to have to train this pony, and that's not going to be fun. It's never fun to train one. They don't understand what you're doing. And so it's a lot of work. And he's like, well, I'll do it. And I was like, okay, we'll see how long this lasts. And luckily, my friend Sean Brackett, good trick rider and a great horse trainer, he had a horse that he had trained to trick ride, and he was slow and big and easy to ride, and he didn't have any place or use for him at that moment. And he said, well, you can just have him for a while, and Trevor can practice and learn on him. At least he was a big horse, so he couldn't do any groundwork yet, but he could at least do the elementary stuff, learning how to spin the horn and get back in the saddle, and fender drags, and something really easy for him to do. And I was like, okay, well, that's a good tryout. We'll see how he likes it. He really dedicated and tried to learn how to do it, and he really wanted to be a good performer. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna find you a pony. And we found a pony, and he was a little pissant, but he turned out to be a great little trick riding pony. But him and Trevor had to butt heads quite a bit. And I hate that. I think he might have soured Trevor before it was all said and done. But by the end, that pony was pretty awesome. And Trevor had gotten to where he could do some really good trick riding. And that pony ran really good. And so he did get to work some PRCA rodeos. He got to work Burwell, Nebraska, and Elk City and Abilene, Kansas. I mean, those some pretty good rodeos to be able to trick ride at that age. And then he sold that pony. We sold him to Piper Ewell, and then bought another pony that was a little bit bigger, and he trained that one. And then a couple of years after that, he turned around and sold him. But I mean, he was able to buy his first rodeo van from pony sales. And at that, in the meanwhile, he had started riding the bareback horses, the pony bareback horses. And all in all, I think the trick riding helped out a lot. But that was kind of the way he earned his entry fees. Was we stayed close to home and worked those open rodeos that had the junior bareback ridings, and I trick rode and did their openings for them at the ward rodeos. And Trevor could ride bareback horses every weekend and get on those ponies. And that's kind of what we did for about 3 years. And I tell you, it wasn't big rodeos. They weren't pro rodeos, but we had so much fun, just the family every weekend with our friends. And they were, within 2 hours of the house, and we got to perform, and it was just a lot of fun for a few years.
Yeah. There. Well, and they're memories, you're going up and down the road, but you're getting to make those memories with your family. And I just really, really enjoy, hearing. It's one thing to see it, but then like hearing the ins and outs of what's actually going on behind the scenes of how, he played a huge part in training that first pony and then training the second one. And like you said, from the money earned and stuff, was able to buy his first, rodeo van to go on the road and rodeo. Yeah. So that really, really cool. Wendy, whenever you're talking about training these different horses and the ones that you've had over the years, what are some traits that you look for in that horsepower when you're trying to, whether you're putting together a Roman riding team or a trick riding horse, what are you looking for?
The trick riding horses usually will work for Roman riding teams, most of them. You want on a Roman team, you kind of like to have them built the same so that they have the same gait. And I've only trained a few sets of Roman teams. And that was basically, I learned a lot after I trained a few sets of Roman teams, and they were decent. I wasn't as great a Roman rider as I thought I should have been at the time, so I didn't really push it. And then when Vicki and Leon ended up giving me Rudy and Trudy, that team of Zane's, after Zane quit, they called and said, and it was one of those, open door moments when I'm like literally saying, okay, I'm done. And Vicki Adams calls and says, hey, I want you to have this team out of the blue. I'm like, well, okay, I guess I'm not done. But when I rode that team for a while, I was like, holy, this is amazing. I didn't realize how easy this could be. And then it seemed like it was easier to train the next two horses that come along after Rudy died. I was like, wow, that wasn't that hard. So, even in my 40s, I learned a lot. about Roman riding that I sure wish I would have known in my 20s. Trick riding horses have always been an easy thing for me to train. I mean, you don't, once you get a good one, you keep them forever. So I've only had to train 4. Or actually 3, but I had Sonny, he was already trained, so he taught me a lot. And then I got Bucky, bought him. It was kind of one of those deals. We were leaving Minneapolis in the freezing cold, record-breaking low. Joe Simon brought a horse in off a truck of one of his sale trucks, and we were loading up to leave, and this horse unloaded, and I was like, oh, he is built so pretty. Palomino looked a lot like Sonny. I just swung up on him and loped him in a circle, and I was like, I gotta have this horse. And he turned out to be the best trick riding horse that I've ever had. And so I had him, and then he broke his stifle in 08 or 07. And that spring, my vet that I'd worked for, Dr. Billings, he had a Palomino, and he's like, hey, my sister's got a Palomino that needs a place to go, and he might work as a Roman team with that your yellow horse, which would be Bucky. And I was like, okay, I'll take him. And so he'd give me this horse, and his name was Spook. So I had a lot of rodeos that summer, and I was able to haul him with me and try to get him ready for Roman riding. And he was doing pretty good. And I had only trick rode on him just a hair, just to see if he's going to work. He was big, strong, and powerful, and really hard to stay with on the trick riding because he was just so thoroughbred built that long strided. And trick riding horses are a whole lot better if they're short strided and choppy. 1, they look like they're running fast, even when they're not. 2, it's a whole lot smoother in your straps. The big long strided horses really snatch with every stride. So anyway, he was like the big, strong, stout horse. And I'll never forget, we were in, I think, Manhattan, Kansas, and there's like a carnival all around us. And I'm like, well, I need to see if he's going to work. And he did pretty decent. And if Bucky didn't get cast in the stall, and he went ahead and fractured that stifle that night. And I had to pull that horse out and use him the next 2 weeks before we could get home. And ended up having a trick ride on him for the next year and a half, I guess. And he did okay. I felt like he set me back a long ways because I couldn't do a lot of things on him that I did on Bucky. Mm-hmm. And then I was working the Longhorn run. I was taking care of the openings for the Longhorns. Those were always 6 white horses. And my best friend, Tony, she was a trainer at the racetrack, and they had this gray horse that they had bought or had as a pony horse. It was actually someone had owed him money and gave him this horse for the debt. And she's like, we don't have enough room for him this winter, and I think he'll do for your openings if you'll take him and feed him. I won't even charge you a lease, and see if you can sell him. And it's like, okay. So I take Blue on the run with us, and I flag break him in like 2 days, and he is like the best opening horse we got. Everybody wanted to ride Blue. So while we were on that spring, I was like, I'm gonna see if this horse will be a trick riding horse. And before the end of that run, I could have done a performance on him. He just picked it right up. And so he became my main horse after that, up until like I still have him. But I think I trick rode on him once last year, just out of the blue. But it just seems like every time I need a horse, or every time I think I'm going to quit, one just kind of pops right back up.
I'm so glad that they have, because you, you truly are like a legend in, the sport of rodeo and trick riding. And I've, just over the past few years, seen other, it seems like there's quite a few girls that have come up, trick riding that I feel like, they've looked to you, for some guidance and stuff. And I guess that is kind of my next question. I mean, if somebody's listening, Wendy, that, whether it's a parent and their kid says they want a trick ride, or if it's somebody that wants to, and they just don't even know where to start, like, where are some good places they can go, or people they could reach out to? Like, what would you recommend as like first thing they should do?
First thing is, I wouldn't buy a saddle and a horse right off the bat. Karen Bold has a school up in Colorado every year that is probably the best trick riding school, and she'll provide the saddle and the horses, and she'll take you through the ringer. And if they come out of that wanting a trick ride, then they'll make it, and they'll be worth the investment. You're going to get hurt. It's painful. You're going to have bruises from your head to your toes, and it's going to be something that they've got to be dedicated to doing. And there's a lot of kids that start out young and they're burnt out by the time they're teenagers. And don't push them. If it's something they want to do as a career, then it's going to have to be on their own terms, I think, because you can burn someone out really fast on this just because it's painful. It's a lot of work. It's also very humbling when you can't get your body to do what you think your mind tells it to do. And it's a lot of fear. I mean, to bail off a horse running, it's a whole lot of mind over matter. And so you got to get a good mental state to be able to hold it together and still smile and sell it, even though, your saddle might be slipping.
Oh man.
So it's just a lot for a parent to think about before they just say, oh, that looks cool, let's just throw our kid into that. And another thing is I see, and one of my biggest pet peeves is clinicians, people that are wanting to put clinics on as trick riding clinics, and I've never even heard of them. And I'm thinking, if you're still going to a clinic yourself, you don't have any business teaching a kid. So check resumes. Like, there is some outstanding trick riders that are putting on schools right now. Madison McDonald, Loretta Pemberton. Some amazing trick riders, and they have earned their names in the rodeo business, and anywhere they had ever wanted to trick ride, they would have been the top. They are the top notch trick riders. So if I was going to learn, I'm definitely going to send my kid to someone that's world renowned, not the fourth string.
Yeah, well, and you can't really put a price on experience. And whenever you've got somebody that's actually been there, done that, and I think whether you're trick riding or trying to learn how to rope or run barrels or anything, I mean, safety is a big factor. And if you've got somebody with that experience, they're going to put your kid's safety first, I would think so. Yeah.
And they can see things before it happens. They see the scenarios, they can watch a horse and tell, and that's a lot of it. And I get calls all the time wanting clinics or lessons, and I don't have time. And I wish I could, and I hate turning people down. But I'd rather send them to the people that are trying to still make a living at that, like Madison. She's trying to make a living at teaching, and so I'm fine with sending them her way or sending them to Karen. Those are people that I definitely have my respect and know what they're doing, and I don't feel guilty about sending a kid to learn from them.
Absolutely. Well, through all these different, you've gotten to travel a ton of places. You were talking about, getting to work, just the Longhorn running itself, it was something that Loretta Lynn, was a part of. And so, do you have a favorite rodeo, or even maybe just one of the coolest places that you've ever gotten to perform?
We worked Auburn Hills every year, and that was the palace where the Pistons play. That was probably my yearly favorite rodeo. It was huge, beautiful Coliseum that at the time, I don't even know if it's still there now, but at the time it was one of the nicest Coliseums in the United States, in Detroit. And that, I believe it held 15,000 people. And there was several times when it was as loud or louder than Thomas Mack. You could not even hear each other talking in the arena. It was so loud, and just the roar of the crowd was amazing. And so that is something I would say it will always be my favorite place. And then, of course, the NFR and the IFRs were always great too. I feel like I can remember just about every performance of every IFR I ever worked, and the feel of, I finally did this. It's finally made my dream come true, kind of deal. And I mean, I still have you conquer your dreams, and then it's like, well, okay, I guess I'm done. And then things like I say, the doors open and people send you something new, and you're like, well, maybe I'm not done. And so now you have to get new goals.
Yeah.
So new goals, and try to push yourself again and see if you can still do it.
Yeah, well, there's one thing about it. I've never known you to be real still. I feel like you're always going and working toward the next thing, no matter what it is, trick riding or making sure Trevor, was able to get up and down the road and be competitive, or helping Wendell put on bull ridings, or whatever it's been. I mean, you're just a doer, some people aren't, but you are one of those, that rare breed that you're just kind of a mover and a shaker. And speaking of, like you mentioned, the IFR, so that's coming up just here in a couple of weeks. And it's going to be held in Guthrie this year. So tell us about kind of your involvement, with the IPRA over the past few years, or as long as you've been, kind of in the rodeo business, and then what it's been like getting to watch, your son compete at the IFR as well.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome last year, getting to watch him compete for his rookie year. And it didn't go like he wanted. I was still proud of him. I thought he made a great showing for his first year at the IFR, and he came in about, I think, 9th or 10th in the standings. I thought was amazing for a rookie. And so this year, of course, with Corona, it's not been very many rodeos to go to, and he only ended up going to 3. And then he had broke his hand early, like at the last rodeo. He broke his wrist, and it took all summer. And then he had to start college rodeoing, so he only ended up going to like 3 rodeos this year. And then, but ended up getting called in to come to the finals this year. And I had said, my best friend Tony, again, the one that I got in blue from a few years back, she in 2016 or 2017, I believe, she had her most favorite racehorse that she'd ever had. It was her baby. She had to move home to take care of her parents. Mom had gotten cancer and was pretty bad, terminal. And she called, and she's like, this horse is going to waste. He don't have any other horses around. I know you'll take care of him. Please come get him. I want you to do something with him. And at the time, we were thinking barrels. So he's a big 16-hand AAA racehorse right off the track. She had done a lot of trail riding and a lot of just riding on him, and so he had a really good handle. And so I picked Panther up going to the CWRA finals. That year, I think Trevor was in that too that year. So I picked him up, got him home, tried to make a barrel horse out of him. He just didn't like it, but I could tell that he would be something that a Liberty Act or a dancing horse, like he had that personality. So I told her, I was like, I think I'm going to switch this deal and make him start doing some dancing, like marches and cooch and side passing, and then see if he'll take to the tricks, the bowing and laying down and all that. And she's like, okay, whatever. And so ended up like that. He just took right to it. And so for the last 3 years, I haven't pushed real hard, but I've been slowly training on this horse. He's a beautiful big black horse that, he's got a beautiful dance moves, and he's working Liberty now. And so I ended up saying, okay, well, if Trevor makes the IFR this year, I'm going to enter the Contract Acts Showcase. I haven't done it since 2009, and I won it that year. So it's like, okay, if he makes the IFR, and sure enough, when he called in, he made it. I was like, oh, well, I guess I need to suck it up and enter. So he's only got like 3 rodeos under his belt, but we're going to enter the showcase and see how it goes. And then spend the weekend and hopefully, and root Trevor on. Hopefully he'll do well in the average.
Oh, that's awesome, Wendy. I am so pumped for both you and Trevor, but for you and Panther, and kind of making your debut together at the showcase there at the IFR. And
Yeah.
could you tell the listeners just a little bit more about that showcase? Because I feel like that's something that is really unique to the IFR in itself,
Mhm.
having all these different contract acts there in one place that's kind of held outside of the actual rodeo each night.
Yeah, and it happens they've done this for as long as I can remember, at least 20 years they've had this showcase, and it's been pretty special for the specialty acts in the IPRA. I mean, no other association holds their specialty acts with such regard that they would actually give them a whole day of the arena. And this is where you enter the showcase. You can either enter it as the competition part of it, or you can enter it just to show the committees and the stock contractors what you've got. And it's basically a bullfighters, barrelmen, specialty acts all going together, but split up on the competition between each group. And the stock contractors and the rodeo committees can come and watch and see who's new and what's out there. And it's free. It's a free show that, I think is probably something that anybody in the Guthrie, Oklahoma City area would love to take their kids to, because they've always enjoyed it. And then it's about a 2.5-hour show. It starts at 11 o'clock on Friday. And then there'll be freestyle bullfights also that will be part of the show. And then, of course, Friday night's the first performance of the IFR at the Lazy. And then Saturday at, I believe, 1, and then Saturday night at 7, and then Sunday at 1 again will be the final perf of the IFR. So I believe there's a kids' day even, like I want to say Saturday morning or Sunday morning, where it's a free kids deal where they can come and get to meet some of the IFR contestants and play around and see if they want to be cowboys and get some free gifts, that kind of thing. So yeah, along with the showcase being a free thing, they have so much for families to come to. Beginning of the week, they have the buck and stock sale on Monday or Sunday and Monday. And then they go into the IMRA, which is the International Miniature Rodeo Association finals, their national finals. And that starts Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I believe. So it's going to be a full week starting next Sunday.
Yeah. Oh man, that it's just like you said, there's so much that you can come and experience and do, and you can do it on a budget with your family. And I'm really looking forward to being able to watch, via social media, some of the live broadcasting that'll take place of the rodeo. But then also the IPRA has been really good about posting stuff on their Instagram and Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just really looking
Yeah,
forward
and
to
Miss
keeping
Rodeo
up.
USA pageant. I should have mentioned it.
Yeah, I think that kicks off either on Monday or Tuesday as well. And so yeah, there's plenty for everybody to do while they're up there, in the Guthrie, Oklahoma City area that week. And we'll definitely be cheering for you and Panther and Trevor as well.
Yeah.
Wendy, you even, it's been so neat, like you said, to watch your whole family just be involved with rodeo. And you've got another really neat tie, to the IFR and the IPRA. Your daughter, Shelby, she actually works for the IPRA now.
Yes. She got a job working there when Carissa Stewart retired. And before that, she had started dating an IPRA bull rider, and they have since now got married, and she works for the IPRA, and he still goes to IPRA rodeos and rides bulls, and they just had a baby boy, Cashin.
He's so cute. So
starting
cute.
Starting the next generation of IPRA rodeo kids. He's at the IPRA office every day.
So that's literally what, because you said that your granddad did and your grandma put on IPRA rodeos, right?
Yes, they had open rodeos, but they did have IPRA rodeos too.
So Cashin will be 5th generation then, right?
Yes.
Wow, that's some family tradition right there.
Yeah, pretty special.
Well, Wendy, I've so enjoyed getting to visit with you today. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And so I've got a couple of questions to kind of wrap us up. So, what is the wildest thing you've ever had to fix on the fly with bungee cords, baling wire, or duct tape?
Well, it was, those are safe things. My stirrup fender broke right before performance. I want to say while I was carrying the American flag. And I get out and I have to trick ride, I think, in 2 events. And nobody has leather, nobody has any baling wire. And I go to the concession stand and I found, asked them for some bread twisty ties
Oh my.
and fix my fender.
Oh.
And I think it was a year before I realized that, oh, you know what, I should probably fix that.
Those were good twisty ties. That was the good bread, Wonder Bread. So
yeah.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I think that wins
the saddle
the
maker,
prize.
he's like, yeah, the saddle guy, I forget who was working on my saddle at the time, and he's like, what is this? And I said, it's lasted for about a year. I think they're pretty good. So.
Oh my goodness, that's funny. And I'm so glad, you got through that safely.
Yeah.
If there is one thing that you feel like you do to kind of just embrace that cowgirl state of mind when things go south or when your fender breaks, but you got to get ready, what's that one thing you do to keep your mind right, Wendy?
I feel like when I'm most stressed is when I'm usually something kicks in and I'm going to go clean the barn, go ride every horse I've got. I may strip all the saddles. I may strip the house. I might just, it's like it's a cleansing for me to clean and work. I need work. I need physical labor. And that usually can reset my head. But that's typically what is my go-to is I'll work until I'm exhausted, and then I don't have to worry about whatever it was I was worried about.
Amen. That's I spend so much time on a computer these days for work that I miss the physical labor. And as a kid, I never thought I'd say that. I was like, if I have to chunk one more hay bale, but now that I'm grown and my job's a lot different, I like to be able to go and work and do something with my hands, like you said, to just kind of reset my mind. And so I can really relate to that.
Now, working out does not count because I can't do that. It does not help me one bit. I got to go get something, actually, something like a production of something done.
Right.
I got to see progress.
You can see that progress right there. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Wendy, how can people connect with you to just stay up to date on what all you've got going on?
I'm on Facebook. I don't have a page. When I started working full time, I didn't have the opportunity to take off a whole lot of time to go rodeo and book rodeo. So I didn't feel like it was fair to put myself out there and try to book a bunch of rodeos. I'll take them as I come, and so I don't beat the bushes and try to get hired anymore. If somebody calls me and I can work it out to where it's a weekend, I feel like I can get off from work, then I'll go. So Facebook Messenger. I do have an Instagram account, but I'm not on it very often. So Facebook Messenger is usually the best way to catch me.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I know everybody's going to really enjoy listening to this, and best of luck, next week. And as you're prepping this week, getting stuff around, for the IFR, and just can't wait to see what goals you're going after next, Wendy.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to share my story.
All right, girl, take care.
You too. Love you.
Love you.
Thank you for spending your time with me on the Cowgirl Confessions podcast. I'm so glad y'all stopped by. If you could take a moment to share this episode and tag us on social media, I'd be happier than a cowgirl in a sea of buy one, get one vintage turquoise. Subscribe to make sure you don't miss an episode. New episodes will be released bi-monthly. Please leave us a review if you feel so led by going to iTunes. Your feedback will really help us breed the idea of grabbing life by the horns with a cowgirl state of mind into women across the globe. Some that may have never even had the privilege to throw their leg over a horse, but could most certainly use the cowgirl state of mind while navigating life. Thanks again, y'all. Until next time, keep pursuing your dreams with that all go and no woe mentality. Remember, you're writing a story that's worth saddling up for, sister.